Thank you to all those who have tuned in to watch us. This is an event which is going to be a panel discussion about the many issues which youths all across Europe are facing right now. By means of introduction, I will be moderating this event. My name is Yacopo Callus. I form part of the media organisation known as A Bird's Eye View, together with other organisations. This discussion will be made up of the President of the Malta National Youth Council, otherwise known as the Kunsill Nazzjonali taż-Żgħażagħ, Mr. Yacopo Baldacchino, together with the President of the International Coordination of Young Christian Workers, Clémence, Otekpo. Did I get it right?
Perfect.
Perfect. Before we start, a few thank yous are in order. We'd first of all like to thank the Malta National Youth Council for providing the premises which we're in today. Big thank you goes to A Bird's Eye View for providing the equipment which we're making use of, and a thank you goes to Żgħażagħ Ħadiem Ansara, the Malta branch of the Christian Youth Workers, for putting this event together. To start off with, our first topic, first of three, would be education. The questions won't be just to anyone specifically, so both of you may intervene whenever you wish to. Without a doubt, the education system across all of Europe has been through a lot recently with COVID and with a lot of other challenges which it has faced and which it is currently facing. In your view, both of you, what does the future hold for the education system, both in Malta but as well across the EU as a whole?
So, for me, well, the COVID-19 pandemic has been monumental to the education system. It's the longest time that schools have been closed since the Second World War. So I think with today's technological advancement, first of all, and with the population growth and the environmental and societal challenges that we are currently facing, again both in Europe and in Malta, the future should be built on research and evidence. I think it's something that's very important in all aspects of society, but in the education system in general, there's a lot of reforms that are just done because of political whims or convenience, and I think that evidence and research should be the main topic that is focused on, and there's long-term planning.
Yeah, and I think globally in Europe, those times there is also an issue on finding enough teachers to fill the school and to have regular classes with not too much students and to have a good quality of education. And I think it's running in most of European countries. So I don't know if it's through the valorization of the profession or allowing more young people to access also those jobs and those professions that the solution will be fine, but I think there is also some research to lead on how we allow the system to be effective and the young people to access a good education in general, because many young people were sacrificed during this COVID period, and I think after that the comeback to school were not easy either. So there is a lot of efforts to.
Yes, and I think something that should also be kept in mind is a greater, more smooth transition to the workforce, rather than just studying for the sake of studying and for the sake of exams. I think there should be a more smooth transition.
Yeah, or maybe an educational system more focused on preparing students or to real work.
Real life situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are saying that essentially the education system as it currently stands ought to shift away from simply students studying for the sake of getting grades and to be more equipped with entering the workforce once they graduate, as opposed to graduating and not knowing how they're going to progress in their lives.
Yeah, the system adapt to the realities, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the topic of the realities which our education system is facing, you touched upon the amount of students which are in schools. It's no secret that through no fault of their own, for many reasons, some students at least choose to drop out, to not pursue their studies. In both of your opinions, what can any country or government do to ensure that young people and youths and students continue learning, remain in school and progress further in their education?
I mean, for me, there is no age to stop training yourself and getting involved in other studies and, I mean, trying new things. So I think in some countries, the educational system does not allow easily adults or people that gets out of the school system at some point to go back in it. I mean, this is complicated. This asks sometimes money. If you drop school when you were, I don't know, 17 and you want to go back when you are 20, you don't always have a situation at 20 that allows you to pay many money to go in again. So probably there is also a lot of efforts in this type of cases to allow people to get into trainings and without too much complications.
Definitely. And I think something else that's quite a bit of a hindrance is the fact that the students have a very big workload considering the subjects that they have, and I think the education system isn't very much inclusive, so it doesn't allow for extracurricular activities, for example, like sports, arts, even I had some personal experiences where I was actually stopped from pursuing certain things, certain activities, just for the sake of having lectures, having practical sessions, and I think that doesn't motivate students and youths in general to continue studying. It's something that students want to do, and students, after all, it's something that is something healthy for both their mental health and their physical health, and also for their education experience. So if we were to have a reform of the education system in this way, that would allow more inclusive and informal, non-formal education
I agree.
Combined with formal education.
Yeah, I agree, and valorization of diverse experiences.
Yeah.
So most definitely the education system, in order to accommodate and consider these realities, must accommodate the students who wish to pursue extracurricular activities, so that activities after school hours may be allowed to continue, may be allowed to pursue their studies and any academic ventures which they want to undertake, but also, as we've seen in Malta, but I'm sure it happens elsewhere across in Europe, accommodate for students who, for whatever reason, choose to work as well whilst they're studying. And as a context, we've also just seen the measures introduced in Malta where students who are in sixth form may choose to extend their period of study for whatever reason, should they wish to do so while they're studying and working. And on the topic of not just this component, but the system as a whole vis-a-vis education, so you may now get into whatever problem you see and whatever problems you think the system has. What changes and advancements do you think need to be made and need to be introduced within the education system in order for it to be able to provide more for students where it may be currently failing?
I mean, I think the educational system followed for many years one way to do. It's getting better and better, but we're not there yet where everyone can feel comfortable in one place to study something we care about or we feel comfortable about. I mean, we all are different, so we should have different ways of experiencing education. And I think so far this was not pushed enough. So to do so, I think diverse form of education, like popular education, could be pushed away and more recognized, like you mentioned before. I think there is a lot to do, just going out of the frame we used to know, and thinking further.
Yeah, even the curriculum itself, I think, is very focused on theoretical subjects, and like I mentioned before, there aren't any practical, real-life topics that are delved into. For example, financial literacy comes to mind, considering taxes, social security, banking, budgeting as well. mental health, sexual health, especially when in schools where the administration is a bit more conservative, these topics are not really elaborated on. There's just some mentioning in PSD, or I don't know if it's still called PSD, but
Something like that.
it was in my time. But yeah, even civic education, we have one of the directorates that we have as KNZ is the Directorate for Civic Education.
Okay.
And we're currently working towards a curriculum for civic education on a national level that teaches youths and students in general how to vote, for example, the Constitution, EU, politics in general, so debating, critical thinking, and these types of things. I don't think currently the education system prepares youths enough for these situations.
Yeah, and I'm bringing another thing on the table, finances. So young people, I mean, probably less in Europe than in other parts of the world, but there is some young people that does not continue studies because of finance issues. If you need to work to survive, you don't go to school. This is the thing. So there is probably something to be done in this area too, to allow everyone that wants to continue studying to be able to do so.
Yeah, maybe like a work education balance thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't
I would
know
say.
how best to describe it.
I mean, it exists in some countries. I think northern countries are a better system than us in this area, educational area, and there is a lot to learn from their system, like scholarships to every student that wants to continue working or studying.
In Malta, we don't really see that. We, for example, I'm not sure specifically about MCAS, but university, it allows you, I believe now it's 30 hours.
Yes.
30 hours working.
Okay.
It's not related to your field, you just can work up to 30 hours a week part-time, along with your studies.
And the studies, they will manage to make it possible for you to follow classes and everything according to your hours, or?
I personally, I preferred to study, just study and then work after, but I know a lot of people that manage to do both at the same time. So it depends on the person, it depends on their time management, their financial situation, because obviously certain people may not afford to just study and not work.
Yeah, this is it.
So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah, and definitely if a proposition had to come out of this, it is that just as we have the work-life balance for adults in the workforce, why should we not have an education work balance for students who are still pursuing their studies, but still already working? And both of you touch upon our next topic, which is finance. So we keep on hearing a lot in the news currently about inflation, the cost of living, energy prices, all these are going up, and all these are proving to be an increasing burden for many families, young people and workers. Vis-a-vis the financial issues which the current generation of youth and young people are facing, what do you think are the challenges which young people are currently facing, which previous generations may not have been facing in the past?
I would say many now, especially since the pandemic. I mean, I can speak about France because this is where I was staying during the pandemic, and we saw a lot of initiatives to feed the students. So just feed them during the pandemic, because many did not have the opportunity to go to work if they had a work beside the studies, and sometimes they miss the money, the income that they usually have. So if they don't have money, they don't have the possibility to go shopping. They have to go and have some help from the state or from associations. So they are lining up in the streets to have free meals or those kind of things. And it went big, So if you have finance issues that does not even allow you to eat properly, can you imagine on just renting some place or having enough money to buy books to study or those kind of things? huge.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, even in Malta, the cost of living is continuously rising, and the work that youths that are still studying do is not enough, obviously, to sustain them. And there's a lot of economic insecurity right now, especially in young people. It's risking obviously their confidence to provide for themselves and for their families, those that need to, and it's also creating a lot of mental health issues because it's something that is quite troubling when you can't afford to feed yourself or to buy, like you said, books to study, to feed your family, to feed even to feed your pets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So, yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be worked on a national level.
Yeah, I think so.
And I once again, the next question has been preempted in terms of we touched upon rent.
Yeah.
And rent prices and the challenges which youths are facing in terms of accommodation. It's no secret that many young people in this day and age yearn to live by themselves and be more independent from their family, their parents, and have a bit of more liberty in that aspect. However, in at least the case of Malta, and I would imagine in other countries as well, across Europe and across the EU, there are many youths and young people who end up living for an even longer period of time with their parents and end up leaving their houses at least, I think the last statistic was at least 30.
Yeah.
And that is coupled with rise in rent prices and housing becoming more unaffordable as opposed to affordable. Many youths are opting to leave their country and their country of origin and go work and live abroad. And it's no longer feasible to rent or even buy your own accommodation, by yourself at least, in terms of having to live with someone else.
Yeah.
With all these challenges, would both of you still say that it can be still considered to be worthwhile to live alone and independently at any age?
I mean, from my personal experience, I lived with my parents until last year. I was the last of the 5 children to leave my family house. My parents are still there, but I was the last one. And yeah, I think I did not reach the point where I had the financial stability to be able to live. I think most of people wait to have a stable job and to be sure they will be able to pay the rent and everything. I'm not sure that in all European countries people are considering going abroad to find a job, but I think in all European countries, at least mostly Western Europe, there is this problem about thinking to have your own place when you are struggling for many other things financially. And I think students are usually going in big cities for the studies, those kind of things. And this is in those big cities, and the prices are getting crazy. So when you find a job, you made your studies in big cities, and this is usually where you find your first job. You cannot rent something in the city, which creates some precarity for sure.
I believe myself that the question is very subjective because it depends on the person's financial situation, it depends on their career, their study area, for example. Because there are certain areas, for example, with regards to ICT, it's something that's quite a sector which gives you a number of job opportunities and financial security. With regards to other aspects of society, for example, mentioning specifically arts and culture, it's something that's a bit more difficult to do. So even the financial situation of a person and whether they can get help from their parents, for example. Last year we had a study specifically on this as KNZ with the National Youth Agency that focused on youths in housing.
Okay.
And most of youths that responded said that the major problem with them finding, them leaving the house
Yeah.
was financial burdens, and there were a number of them that got help from their parents, for example.
Yeah.
So it's not everyone that is able to get help from their parents to move
can
out
afford it.
and to avoid it. So it's very subjective, and you need to look at different groups, different communities. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, but I think it's getting complicated because
Yes.
if we look, I don't know, 10 years back, 20 years back, this was not the same situation. I mean, people did not stay until this age in their parents' house. Mostly.
Most definitely. To now move on to what we've been talking about is work. Youths, young people finding work, youths being in the workforce, youths having a job which is sustainable. In a world which is now we're in a post-pandemic world, essentially, we're moving on from COVID, we are amidst a war in Ukraine, and there are many challenges popping up across all of Europe and across the world. For both of you, what is your outlook towards the job opportunities which youths may come across, and also the job market in general, which ought to be at the disposal of young people?
That's a tough one. I mean, the situation was already complicated after COVID. After Ukraine war, this is not finished yet, so we are currently in it. It's probably getting even more complicated.
It's very difficult to say. It's
Yeah.
something that's still evolving. It's something that needs a bit of a smooth transition, but it's very difficult to get a smooth transition. But hopefully the situation improves in the near future, because it's definitely needed. I think that jobs, especially during the pandemic, were hit in a very big way.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, in certain aspects. For example, in the arts and mentioning arts and culture, again, it was something that took a very, very big hit. So it's something that now in a post-pandemic reality, we need to transition a bit smoothly so that the situation eventually gets better.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
And when we have a particular context like this one, can be a pandemic, can be a war, we see that the job offer suffer from it in general. But usually you have also this phase where other job opportunities or other possibilities open up. And I mean, the world will adapt for sure, but once again, probably young people will suffer from it at some point. This is part of the game when we have those kind of global events.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the young people our age will suffer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think this is a very good point. I think whilst there were loss in certain spheres of work, there were definitely some openings. Obviously, not the scale didn't balance.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very good point to mention, and we should learn from that, because I think if this certain situation were to repeat itself, we need to learn from it and see which jobs, which work opportunities are best suited to the situation.
Yeah.
For example, technology-related jobs were obviously a bit more needed. For example,
Yeah, they increased a lot.
Yeah. For example, something that I didn't think about at the time was live streaming. For example, our vice president does live streaming services for certain events, and it's something that had a very big boom during and after the pandemic. So I think it's something to learn from, for sure.
Yeah.
No easy questions, but the solutions to them aren't difficult to introduce. We, however, now to a even more difficult note. In light of the challenges which young people are facing, as we continue to see with the rise in inflation, the cost of living is going up, energy prices are going up, electricity and water bills are going up. How would you say that the current economic and financial situation is impacting the ability of youths to grow and develop even further in their lives and careers?
Well, if we speak about impact, I would say enormously.
You could be here till tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, youth was sacrificed in
Not
this
just
period.
youth.
Yeah, but youth
But-
mainly. With the pandemic, a lot. Considering all the events that are running after, this is not helping to, take the step back and take the step up and get back on your feet. But I mean, they suffered from everywhere, I would say. The school, they suffered. Financially, they suffered.
Health-wise, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
that was something that took a very big hit. Even especially mental health during the pandemic, it was, and even now after the transition, it's something that created a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. First of all, for the general health, about getting infected, passing it on to someone else, especially if you're living with an elderly person, someone who's vulnerable, and it's something that for me it was quite stressful. Even if, for example, you have to stay in quarantine and you need to stop from your life for those 2 weeks to it's a pause.
Yeah, and social life.
Social life as well.
For young people suffered a lot. I think also when you are young, this is a period where you are experiencing things. You go out, you realize new experiences, and I cannot imagine. I mean, I already passed, I think, this period at some point when the pandemic hits. I finished already studies in university. I started to work a little, so it had some impact on me, but all this generation which was in high school or in university, this is the period you are supposed to experience a lot of things. And I mean, 2 years sacrificed. This is really hard.
Especially when considering that certain people don't have the most ideal home situations. So for example, when it comes to cases of domestic violence or people in the LGBT community that are, for example, discriminated against even at home, it's something that took a very big hit on mental health.
Yeah. I think this is where also association during the pandemic took over, the responsibility of helping people, feeding them, allowing them to find a place maybe to at least share their problems. This is also a new model of society that grow. I think we have a lot to learn from this period, but yes, young people suffered a lot from this period, and I think yes, on their general possibilities to, have possibilities to invest, having possibilities to have a right education.
Yeah.
They were impacted on each of these topics.
Education is something that's very important to mention, because with the current cost of living, with the current developments of it, it's something that's going to keep increasing, the cost of living, and it may allow certain students to drop out of school to help support themselves or their families. So obviously this is something that is not beneficial for their careers in the long term. They may find a job temporarily, but they may not work towards their own passions and their own career prospects. So again, it's a vicious cycle, because this creates mental health issues and more lack of confidence and more anxiety. So it's a vicious cycle that needs to be broken in some way.
Yeah, and like we were sharing about education before, those people who just left the system, what have we done, or the system done for them to get back if they want? I don't know, probably it will create some more issues.
As probably the only intervening comment I'll make, I definitely relate to a lot of what both of you just said. To now move on to our third and last topic, mental health.
As more time passes on and as more research is made and reports are issued, more statistics
Show that youths, in particular, youths especially, are being affected by mental illness and mental ill health. What do you think needs to be done to help improve the quality of life of young people in light of these statistics? And what do you think are the main factors which are causing such problems in the first place?
For me, the first and main issue is that young people do not feel heard. And this is at the base of everything. I think 10 years ago you could find more politics and, I don't know, proposal for young people. You had at least programs for them, and I think this is declining strongly this last year. Even during the elections in Europe recently, there is less and less things proposed for young people, I would say. And this is concerning. I mean, me, when I look around me, I feel bad for young people. I'm this close to still consider myself as young, but very soon I will not be anymore. But yeah, if I were in this generation like 10 years back, I think I will feel depressed too. I mean, when you don't feel considered, you are starting to think, I think at some point, to what purpose?
Yeah. And I think with regards to politics itself, there's an element of tokenism. So there's a lot of proposals. In Malta, I think that's what happens, that there are proposals, but then they don't have any substance, and youths are just used as a platform to get more votes. So it's something that definitely doesn't allow for youths to be heard. And I think certain communities are exasperated by this, and even to touch on certain other aspects of the question, it depends as well on the age of the youths. For example, if they are students, because students obviously have school to go to, it's mandatory up until a certain age, and they need to combat with the workload of keeping up with their studies, and like I said, manage extracurricular activities, family, and taking care of their mental health as well. With regards to working youths, like we said, the cost of living is rising, so it's something that they would definitely need to cope with, along with the pressure of settling down, finding a family. And there's also a lot of other stressors currently to mental health, like the environment. The pandemic was also one of the biggest things. So yeah, it's definitely something that's very complex, like we said previously.
Yeah. I think this mental health situation is also linked to what we ask to the youth right these days. We ask them to be able to find a job, to sustain themselves, then to think about a family, then to get engaged, then
Have kids.
I mean, yeah, you have so much things we ask the youth to be able to do, but they cannot do anything and everything, and they cannot, check all the boxes just to please everyone.
And themselves as well, because society creates a pressure on the specific person.
Yeah.
And social media doesn't help. seeing your friends and celebrities, for example, doing certain things and constantly traveling and having the best clothes, whatever, it's very easy to get in a mindset of comparing yourself with other people.
And everyone seems to do a lot of things, so when you don't match all of this, you don't feel well for sure.
Yeah, because social media only shows the positives. It never shows the negative aspects of one's life. So you're constantly seeing like the best of a situation and comparing yourself with that.
That's true.
Indeed. What improvements, if any, do you think need to be made in mental health services, and where do you think that mental health care services may be failing currently?
So, personally, in Malta, in recent years, there was a shift to deinstitutionalize the mental health services and get them to be more on a community level. And I think, whilst that's something that's very positive, it needs a bit more effort and incentives for it to be, first of all, more efficient and more meaningful to the persons. One specific note that I'd like to touch upon is mental health first aid. In Malta, it's only provided by one entity, I believe, and it's not provided, it's provided at a fee, so not everyone will be able to afford it. Obviously, there are certain incentives when it comes to, for example, university have the degree plus, and it's something that there are certain courses that are provided at a very minimal fee, but it's something that certain persons with financial issues may not be able to afford, and thus it creates a discrimination in terms of that.
Yeah, I think about discrimination, affordability, we could say a lot. I mean, if you need to pay or to give something, to have access to help concerning health issues, this is a real problem. Because usually the persons with the most health issues are the ones that have less means.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is not going anywhere. And I think if you want to have a great service for health issues, mental health issues, you have to give you the means to go for it. And if you want to help the population that do not have the power or the possibilities in global service to have what it takes, you need to find a solution.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would also say that more training needs to be given, not just to mental health professionals, but to all healthcare professionals, and even specifically in the youth sector, youth workers, teachers, parents as well.
Yeah.
So very often there's a mentality that mental health is a taboo. It's something that you just need to
Hide.
manage,
Yeah.
so and hide. But that's where we need to implement this mentality of acceptance and tolerance and helping each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, and for youth, I think it's complicated also, because when you are grown up, you can have psychologists or, those kind of professional people that can help you. When you are a kid, this is different. I can speak for France because I don't know very much how it's happening in other countries, but usually in France you have a nurse when you are in school, and I think over the years the nurse system just fall apart. Now sometimes you have a nurse, but for, I don't know, 3 or 4 different schools, this is very different for this professional to be able to do their work correctly. So sometimes you are in school, you have an issue, you need to speak to someone. The teacher is not the person indicated for this mission. So you want to see the nurse, but the nurse is here on Thursday. And we are Tuesday. Oh, bad luck. What can you do? I mean, you don't have anything to go to, so you have friends, good. But maybe they cannot help you, and if you don't have friends, you are alone.
Yeah, in Malta we have a system where there's counselors.
Yeah.
But very often there's an element of fear that there's no anonymity. So you're going to the counsellor and you're telling them about certain problems, but you fear. And I think it's something that is very internal. Because there may not be a problem in itself, but to open up about a certain issue, you need a bit of courage, and you need to be. You're obviously going to think about something like this. That what if someone finds out about it, or some whatever. So it's definitely a big problem that needs to be tackled. especially in schools, because the younger generations of youths are spending so much time in schools, more than nowadays they're spending at home. And there also needs to be this kind of service in work opportunities, in jobs, in placements, in career aspects, because everyone goes through mental health issues at one point in their life. So it's something that's definitely rising with future generations. So it's something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, and like you said, I think when you go through mental health issues when you are pretty young, this needs to be tackled at this moment, not to wait for, I don't know, multiple years. This is the type of things that get worse with the time, so
Definitely.
cannot wait.
And to now have our last preempted question again, do you think that enough awareness is being made about mental health in general, and that enough work is being done to help combat the stigma and taboos which you mentioned surrounding mental health?
Information, more and more.
Yes.
Enough, I don't know. Then solutions, not at all. We still have a lot of work to do, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly what I was going to say. That was the first thing that came to mind. There's a lot of awareness. There's a lot of social media campaigns, a lot of billboards, for example. But when it comes to action, it's really
Lacking.
It's really lacking. And I think that first of all, there needs to be more improvement of the mental health services for when you're going through something. And there's also a need to eliminate the stressors so that it's preempted. You're not just like having mental health issues and need to combat it and cope with it there and then, but you're also looking to create a society where these mental health issues are avoided altogether. Obviously, you can't get rid of everything because there's always going to be something. But if you can work to at least mitigate certain stressors and certain anxiety-inducing situations, it would definitely be helpful to society and the individual persons.
100%.
That was our last question and brings today's event to an end. Before wrapping up, however, I don't know if there are perhaps any concluding remarks and any information you want to pass on to those watching us in terms of should they wish to get in touch with you and where they can contact your respective organizations and follow your work.
Well, I think the best way for young people to be involved in also this kind of discussions and to be part of the solution is to get involved.
Yeah.
So there is many structures that can allow it. I mean, in high school level, for example, there is some instances you can get involved. At work too. But yeah, remain in the margins never helps. Even if sometimes it's difficult to take this path to get involved, I think it's very, very important for each one of us and also to create a difference. I mean, we all have experiences and we can all bring something on the table. So getting involved in the best way to tackle all these issues.
Yeah. With regards to KNZ, we have a lot of different initiatives throughout the year. We work on various topics. It's quite broad. So even if you have a passion for something in particular, for example, passion for the environment, passion for sports, arts, there's always going to be something that we're going to do to help in this situation. So I think it's best for youth to get in contact with us through our social media pages, follow our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We try to vary our social media platforms to reach different aspects of the youth community, because obviously it's very broad. So to target all the population, it's quite daunting. But yeah, we have something for everyone.
Yeah, I think on all these issues, there is more and more initiative. If initiative does not exist around young people, they can be the initiative.
Yeah.
And gather around them. And yeah, I think coming from a popular education milieu, I would say, it proves me that this is the solution. To get involved and to create things and to bring your own experience.
Definitely.
Thank you and well done to both of you for all the work which you and your colleagues do. We encourage our viewers to follow and keep up to date with the work being done by the Malta National Council and the International Coordination of Young Christian Workers on their respective social media pages, as well to follow Bird's Eye View and Young Christian Workers Malta for further events and updates. Thank you to all those who have tuned in and joined us. Goodbye and have a nice day.